And today's lecture is Live in the End, right? Live in the End. In this lecture series, we've taken a couple of lessons from God's creative word itself, the rock, the water, and the wine, a persistent assumption, and we've gone through all of these various lessons using passages of scriptures to learn the truth about our own imagination. Who is God? Your eternal body is the imagination, and that is God Himself, and that is the fundamental lesson, the fundamental truth, the starting point of all mysteries is that Christ is in you, and that is the hope of glory. And today we'll be discussing living in the end, and we'll actually discuss it, well, both from scriptures and also with one or two lessons from dreams that were shared with me during this week. So it's going to be a very spiritual one, and it's also going to be practical. So I want us to pay close attention to what we learn. Live in the end. This is the secret of creation. This is the only way by which we can bring anything to pass. That is all that man is called upon to do. To assume a state and be faithful to that state, and not live up until that state is externalized in this world. In other words, to live in the feeling of the wish fulfilled, to live in the end. Like I said earlier, three dreams were shared with me. A couple of dreams were shared with me in this week. So I'll be taking the first now. I'll read it to you. Then, after I've read it, we'll see the meaning because this dream really tells us how to change our state of consciousness. Okay? Tells us how we can change our state of consciousness. And let me read. It says, I was in our old yard here at Aba. Now, Aba is the dreamer's hometown. So I was in our old yard here in Aba. It happened that the general overseer of the church I attend came to visit me. I was showing him our former flats. The house had been so beautifully renovated. I was pointing out to them that we had stayed in three different flats of the same building. I said, after this current rent expires, it is our own house we're moving to, because whatever I say always comes to pass. I repeated the statement boldly because it is true. That statement was impressive to my pastor. He said, where is the space to buy land? I said, I've seen a space just after the house in the next street. I was pointing to show them. Then I automatically knew what was in his heart. He wants a space to build another church. Then I didn't mind. I just said, I know some very good spots for the church too. He said, really? He said, those places all have house. I said, don't worry. We buy an old house at a good spot, then demolish the old house and build a new one of our choice. Companion was highly impressed with this brilliant idea. Then after that, he said it shifted. It's now happened that we were contributing money as neighbors, 70K for two reasons. First, for a dead neighbor, and second, for repairs. One particular neighbor was angry that the neighbor died wasn't a good person, so why contribute? I said, why do you care? That money wouldn't do much as bring him or her back from dead, so stop complaining. This is such a beautiful dream, and it's a perfect vision. Now, a perfect vision means that it tells us a deep mystery of creation in a complete manner. And the dreamer of all of life is God. That's who you are. That's who I am. We are the dreamers. We started the dream as Adam. Adam slept a deep sleep. He dreamt that Eve, the emanation, was brought to him. And the dream has carried on ever since. And that was the state we all fell into in the beginning. God, the Elohim, the many who became one, or the one that is many, said, let us make man in our image and after our likeness. And how did he do it? He fell into a state. The state was called Adam. And this state is the state of man who was asleep. And I started off this lesson with us today with a few words. One of them was, your eternal body is the imagination. That is God. And that is the true man. He fell asleep in the state of Adam. And we see him carrying on in that dream as Joseph. Now, as Joseph, we see that it is not only a dream, it's even a death. Not only a dream, but a death. And Joseph promised, he asked them to promise, said to them, promise me that when you leave Egypt, you're going to take my bones with you. You're going to carry my bones with you. He said, all right, we promise. We'll carry your bones with us and bury you where the fathers were buried. And this dreamer who shared this experience with me has had similar vision, confirming not only those states, but in fact the state of the awakened imagination, which we come to when we talk about the state of Jesus. And we can see that this is the state of Jesus in a couple of indications from this dream. First, the general overseer was there, inspecting the house with her. And according to scriptures, the general overseer or the shepherd of the church is Christ, is Jesus. That's the first. 1 Peter 2, verse 25. Tells us that we have once gone astray in various states, dreaming all sort of things, but we've now come at last to the shepherd of our soul, the guardian of our soul. So that is Jesus. That's the first thing indicating it. But the second and beautiful thing indicating it is that she knew the thought of the shepherd. She knew the thought of the general overseer. Just the same way, if you're familiar with the stories of Jesus, you would hear it is written that, oh, he knew the thought of the Pharisees, he knew the thought of the Sadducees, he knew the thought of those who were following him, he knew the thought of this. That's the same thing she did in the dream, which I know that many of us here can also relate that we've done it in our dreams. Suddenly knowing the thought that's going on in the hearts of people in our dreams. So when I say that the whole story of scripture is allegorical or biographical, that is what I mean. When I say it is a revelation of the deep mysteries of Christ, and that this revelation of truth reveals to you how you can operate your imagination. This is what we mean. That is not historical. Because the character that we call Jesus is you when you are acting that part out. Now, she brought the general overseer to their house and showed him their former flats, which had been renovated. And the former flats in the house are the former states. As we've seen in the book of John 14, verse 1, my father's house are many mansions. If it weren't so, I wouldn't have told you that I go to prepare a place for you, but I've told you so. So I've gone to prepare a place for you, and I will come back to make you be with me where I am. So the houses represent states of consciousness. And he said, these are the former house. This is the former house. These are the former flats. We've lived in 3 of them. Meaning we've gone through all the experiences, and now we've come to the point of resurrection. The third day represents the day of resurrection, or the day of completion in divinity. So we've come to the third, where now we are conscious creators. And that's the first important thing we must understand in terms of living in the end. You can't live in the end as an unconscious creator. You can only live in the end as a conscious creator. Because there's a difference between being alive and living. We are all currently lively stones, part of this one body, this one Lord, this one Father, lively stones. But we are all to become living beings, quickening spirits. So we can be alive, but that doesn't mean that we're living. Everything around us is alive. If you know the science of things around, they tell you that all things are moving, all things are animated, that nothing is static, that everything is in constant motion. But that doesn't mean that it is living. That doesn't mean that it is conscious of being, nor conscious of the state where it is in, nor conscious, in fact, about to move from one state to another. But this dreamer has gone through all three. Conscious of being, conscious of the state where they're in, and now this dream shows that they are conscious about to move from one state to another intentionally, deliberately. So he said, she said, when this current rent is expired, we will not renew it. We let the state die and we won't pay any attention to it anymore, because the only payment we can make for a state of consciousness is our attention. We pay attention, and what we pay attention to is alive. But she said, no, after this rent is expired, in other words, a natural time is going to pass between now and this state that I am in and the state that I am now imagining myself to be. In changing our state of consciousness, two states are always relevant at the beginning, and then one state becomes relevant at the end. And this story, this dream, shows us that two states are always relevant at the beginning. The first state that will be relevant is the state of consciousness that you're currently in. How you describe your world currently, where you are living right now, that state is relevant from the beginning. So she didn't deny it. She didn't say, no. We've never lived in a house such as this. No. She said, this is our current place. But when the rent is expired, we won't renew it. We'll move into our own new home. So we first start with self-observation, which is to know what we currently have in life. What is your current portion in this world? The way you describe anything in this world simply dictates back to you exactly where you're living. Now, you may admit it and you may not, but if you want to be self-taught in this world, then you better admit it, that you created all that you currently have in this world, that you've created. So take a self-observation of your current experience. What would you say is happening in your life currently that you don't like? Doesn't have to be bad. And of course, I'm not saying it has to be good either. I'm not saying you have to sugarcoat it or that you should deny it. I'm asking you to be honest with yourself and admit this is currently the mess in place. But don't take it as, oh, it's so bad, I did something terrible. No. Rather, just observe it. The way she did, she showed the shepherd, she said, look, this is the current place we're living. Then she said, when the rent is expired, we won't renew it. This is my current state of consciousness. Financially, this is where I'm at. Just describe it. I don't have the money, or I don't have the sales, or I don't have the breakthrough. I'm not financially free. I'm in debt. Whatever it may be honest. Describe it. Then admit to yourself You once paid the rent for that. You once paid attention to it, whether by reacting to it for someone else's life or by actually being in fear, in worry that it would happen to you, or by trying to prove it wrong to someone that you could never be in that situation. You once said, "No, I could never be in that situation. It could never be me." And then you've ended up in that situation. And that's all right. All of those were imaginal acts that you would no longer do. Then the second thing she does is she said, "Okay, we're going to be moving to our new house." And she knew the heart of the shepherd because she is actually the shepherd. Now, I don't know if she's here and if she remembers that she's once shared a dream with me where she did prove that she was the shepherd because she found the flock, the sheep, coming to her in a church. The same person has dreamt that and has shared it with me. So now she knew the heart of the shepherd, that the shepherd would like to have a new church. Now, for those of us who don't know it, church is the common word in the New Testament to indicate the same meaning that house has in the Old Testament. So the word church means the called out, meaning the state that you've called out of all creation that is finished. All creation is already finished, but the states that you call out, they are the ones that follow you. That's what the word church really means. Literally, means the called out. And in scriptures, 1 Timothy 3, verse 15, it says the house of the Lord, which is the church. So the house is the church of God. And he wants to build a new church. He said, okay, you know what? There, I have spotted places where we can buy land. Now she's actually saying we can buy land there. And he looks there and he said, there is no place, there is no spot. They've already built houses there. There are old houses there. She said, this is the strategy. And I want you to realize this is the step to live in the end, to go to the end and live in the end. She said, no, don't worry. This is the strategy we will use. First, we will buy the old house. It's already built, but we'll buy that land with the house that's already built on it. Okay, which is currently what you have. You've self-observed, you've looked at your state of consciousness, you've detected where you currently are in. Then the second thing is we're going to demolish it and build the structure we want on it. So she said, no, don't worry. We don't have to try to go out and look for a new thing. We don't have to go and look for a state or a land that has never been used before. It is right where we are that we're going to build on. Don't go looking for greener pastures. She's saying, we don't need it. We are self-sufficient to build a new state, to demolish the old state and build the new state. That's exactly the same thing Jesus was saying here. He said, destroy this temple, and in 3 days, I will raise it up. Now you can see the same symbolism in both the dream here and the revelation back in scriptures. So what is the strategy and how can you apply it? First, know where you currently are. Admit it. Once you do, define the new state. What would you like to have? What's your house of choice? She would never have said, go buy on that piece of land if that pastor or the shepherd, which is still you, had not desired a new building, a new church. So she only suggested a strategy upon his desire, upon his taste for a new experience. And then she added a statement. She said, whatever I say always comes to pass. And that's she living in the end. Whatever I say always comes to pass. So you start with knowing where you are currently. And then you define the states that you want to be in. Make it very clear. So maybe you just look at how do you describe your financial situation? Let's take that as an example. And you look at it and you go, you're broke. You go, I'm broke, in debt, and unable to cater for myself and for all that matters to me. Okay, that's your old state of consciousness. Now you promise yourself with the commitment, you would not renew the rent of that state, which means you no longer pay attention to it as real. Yes, it is there. We're not denying it, but that doesn't mean that we have to pay attention to it. Means someone could be playing a movie, right, in the same room as you are in, but maybe you're doing something else. You're making some food, and you don't want that food to be burned, right? So you pay attention to it. So you don't go to watch the movie with them. You're paying attention to the food rather than to the movie, even though the movie is interesting. We can choose what we pay our attention to. And immediately you create the new state. You formulate the idea mentally. Oh, you don't know how it is going to happen. You don't know who you have to meet to make it happen. You don't know where it is going to happen from. You don't know what is the next step you have to do. And people go on and ask, what is the inspired action? But you don't even know the inspired action. But the dream is telling us here, you don't have to. It doesn't have to be a barren land. It doesn't have to be a virgin land. Right where you are, you create the new thing. You demolish the old by stopping to pay attention to it. And then you bring up the new by starting to pay attention to that. And then you commit to yourself in your consciousness that whatever you dream of, whatever you wish for, always happens. She says, it is our own house we're moving into, because whatever I say always comes to pass. And she repeated that. Whatever I say always comes to pass. So know the state you want to be in. Now, we construct the new state. No longer being in debt, but becoming debt-free. That means freedom. No longer incapable of handling your bills, but becoming secure. No longer not knowing what money you have or where the money is going to come from, but having so much money in abundance. No longer managing to spend for survival, but actually lavishly spending because you thrive in. And then you create that state, and it's your state of financial abundance, or your state of financial breakthrough, or your state of financial freedom. Then you fuse with it. You fuse with it. Simply in your consciousness, you have that thinking going, that inner conversation. I am financially free. It is as simple as that, but it will surprise you that not so many people can actually point to that particular state in their consciousness. Now, I'm not saying that some people don't do the affirmations of it, but affirmations don't matter anything. Can you, in the course of your day, point to the very moment when you actually pay the money or contribute the money for that state? And that's what she did the next. It happened we were contributing money as neighbors for two reasons. The first, for a dead neighbor, and that is to bury it completely. And how do we bury a state? We bury a state by actually repeating the idea of the new state until it becomes habitual for us, until it becomes our new home. So she contributed the money. And the other people were protesting, how would you contribute to this state that was no good? This state was no good at the beginning. How would you contribute for it? She said, calm down. All of this contribution would not do anything as to raise up the old state. In other words, don't bother paying attention to whether the old state was good or bad or terrible. Don't even bother about how could I escape from the old state, because all you can really look at is that we're making repairs of the new state. We're building the new temple. We're raising it up. That's what scripture says in Amos 9, verse 11 and 12. And it says the same thing in Acts 15, verse 16. Amos 9, verse 11 and 12. It says, in that day I will raise up the booth of David, the tabernacle of David that is fallen, and repair its breaches, and raise up its ruins, and rebuild it as in the days of old. So reconstruct a new state. And I'll pay the money for that. And what is the money in consciousness? Our inner conversation. That's the money in consciousness. Our inner conversation. So what's the method for doing this? Number one, know the old state you were in. Number two, with the commitment that that is dead, that it's dead to you. And the only thing you would ever have to do with it is, in fact, payment for the new state or attention that you pay to the new state. The only trigger it can ever cause in you is a reminder that you are now a new person, that you now have a new life, that you're now in the new state. Then you define the new state. And your definition of him, you're very clear, very exact. What exactly you want. It's not random. Then you go to the third, which is to now practice the inner conversation of being in the new state. You practice it deliberately, you practice it repeatedly until you've raised it up. Does it take 3 days? Yes. 3 days in consciousness actually means you continue to do the act until it has become fulfilled or until it becomes sealed in your consciousness. If it takes 5 days in this literal timing, then 5 days it is. But it will still be called 3 days of raising it up in consciousness. If it is 2 weeks, then 2 weeks it is. But you continue to do that act. And if it is a day, then a day it is. If it is even 3 minutes, then 3 minutes it is. But for as long as it takes you to repeat that inner conversation of, I am financially free. Or if it was health and you found yourself to be sick, you've been fallen sick from one sickness to another, from one ailment to another. Now you define the state of being perfectly healthy. Then you use the conversation with a friend, for example, of a friend telling you, I've never seen you look better. And then you say, I've never felt better. And then you keep imagining that. Every time someone says, hey, buy the new medicine, but you actually repeat the imaginal act of hearing your conversation, I've never felt better. Someone says, hey, but what's with the face? Why are you looking this way? But you don't let yourself sink into that state any longer. Because that shepherd said, hey, but there are old houses here. And she didn't sink into it. She said, oh, no, don't worry. We will actually buy it that way and rebuild the old new structure on it. You do the same thing. And as you keep doing that, you're moving into that new state, which is the end. It brings us to the second dream that I've received. And it's such a beautiful, amazing thing. In this second dream, this second dream is in 2 parts. The first part of the second dream was shared to me a couple of weeks ago, and I've already mentioned it to us once, I think in passing. And in this dream, said, I dreamed that I was living at the end of the river. It was beautiful, and my neighbor said something about the glitter in the river when the sun rises in the morning. I didn't understand why they called it the end of the river because they could have called it the beginning. At one point, my boys brought a bucket with small animals, puppies, mice, kittens, and we were all crawling around on this bench outside. So I freaked out and I was screaming about being afraid of lice and stuff. So I ran to my neighbor to ask for help because I was really scared of all the animals. She refused to help until she saw how emotional I got. Then I realized that my daughter had been in the bench before the animals were there and she was gone. So I ran to the river and I saw her under the water with a stuffed animal. I jumped in and I dragged her out and started doing CPR, but she was gone. Then I went looking for the other three daughters because I remembered there were four of her. I went looking for the other three. I found two others, but they were also gone. Then it seemed to me that the three that I found were actually dolls that looked like her, and they had to be the fourth one. I couldn't find the fourth one, and I woke up. And that was the dream a couple of weeks ago. And that dream simply puts her in the Garden of Eden. Because the Garden of Eden that we have a river that flowed in four heads, that flowed and divided into four rivers. The first of the four rivers was Pishon in the Garden of Eden, which literally means increase of the circle, or which means expansion, set for expansion. Increase of the circle, increase of the circumference. The only way you can increase the circumference of a circle is that you expand the circle. That's the only way. For increasing the, if you want to add to any other shape, you only have to maybe stretch it or elongate the length. But for the circle, it has no starting point, it has no ending point. So the only thing you can do is to expand it from the center, like push it forward from within, from the center. But any other one, you can just drag the length, drag just the sides for a triangle, for example. But you can't do that for a circle. It has to be from within that you pull it out, or that you push it out rather. The second river is Gihon, which surrounds Ethiopia, and it means the bursting forth of the blood. And all states already exist in our consciousness, but they are dark to us. It starts from the center within us, and if you go within, the only thing you'll find is the imagination, the first river. When you go within the imagination, you find it is blackness, but you find this blackness is amid the states are amid the blackness. So you come back to the beginning, the creation of the world, and God actually created everything from what? There was darkness on the surface of the earth. Should you close your eyes now that you want to meditate or you want to contemplate the states, the first thing you would encounter is that blackness. Before you then begin to, out of that blackness, begin to outline the world that you dream of. You can outline the shape of a friend from that blackness. You can outline the words that you would like to hear from that blackness. You can outline anything from that blackness. So the bursting forth of the black. She found the second. She found the third daughter, which is the flowing to the east of Asia. That is Tigris, which is flowing to the east of Asia, or Basira rather. And it means rapid forward of a step. So that's the third. So she found these three daughters, but she didn't find the fourth. And the third means she stepped out of that black into the light, which many people don't actually do. And that is the greatest mirage of mankind. It is to know, I'm going to imagine this. This is the reason why people don't live in the end, because they go to the end, but they don't stay there. They go, okay, I want financial freedom. Oh, now that I want financial freedom, what would I imagine that would imply I'm financially free? I could imagine that I hear my friends saying, wow, you're so Okay, I'm back. Can you all hear me?
Yes, I can hear you now.
Okay, great. Thank you. So, as I was saying, let's see. So they come to the first, right? They find the first daughter, they find the second daughter, but they don't find the third. And you have to find the third, which is, like I've said, the third, three actually symbolizes completion of the work. So the third is stepping forth from the black into the light. Now, many people go, oh, yeah, I'm going to imagine that my friend says to me, wow, you're so rich. Or I'm going to imagine that I'm saying to myself, I can do the inner conversation of, I am financially free. And then that's all. They construct it and they keep constructing it, but never actually imagine it or shine the light on that state. So you go within, first daughter, construct the event that would imply you already have the wish fulfilled. Second daughter, and then you imagine that event is actually happening. You have to complete the pattern. The third daughter, you have to actually imagine that your friend is saying to you and feel that your friend is saying it. There's a big difference between imagining that you will imagine your friend is saying it and imagining that you actually have your friend saying it to you. There's a big difference. And you can feel that difference just from the way I've described it now. So you actually feel yourself right into that scene that you proposed. And if your attention wants to wander, as it often does, your attention may want to wander into, okay, yeah, my friend will say that I look so rich. And then after my friend has said that, the next thing that would happen would be, um, I would be wearing this nice dress. Oh yeah, I could then take a vacation. I've always wanted to go to the Vatican, and I've always wanted to go to Paris. And okay, now this person is no longer imagining on the third daughter. They're no longer having the third daughter. They're actually back to the second. Because now they're only constructing more and more and more states from the blackness, but never imagining that it's the lights round about them. When you construct the state that you want to realize, and you construct the scene that implies the fulfillment, that is the second daughter you found. But you must go forward to find the third daughter, which is to then imagine that you are experiencing. The moment you do, the fourth is going to show forth in your world naturally. Because this is what happened. If you recall, the second dream, the last thing she said was, she said, there had to be a fourth one that I couldn't find. And I told her, well, revise that you found the fourth one. And later she shared this dream with me during the week. She said, let me type it very fast. I was at the back of my house and noticed a piece of land that wasn't cleaned by my neighbor while I was cleaning. So she didn't put the task to her neighbor and said, okay, it's my neighbor's duty and she should do it, or he should do it, or they should do it. She set out to clean it because it's actually not your neighbor's land, it's yours. You found anything in your world. First, we found out you don't have to know any person in this world. You don't have to find any greener pastures. You can build right on the state where you're on from the first dream. And then you don't have to go, okay, it's those people that build the old houses, right? They have to demolish it themselves. No, you can be responsible for that also. Remember, there are no order in this world. Or remember, from the very first dollar that you found, you've admitted that you are the conscious creator. She lived in three flats in the first dream. The second dream, she found three daughters. First, you know that you are the conscious creator. Second, you know that the state that you're currently in, you know that you've created it. Then third, you know how to move from that state to the next state. And you actually move. So she said, as I was cleaning it, I noticed I was by this beautiful river, which she has actually mentioned in the first. There was a river that was glittering. That river is the river in Eden. Revelation 22, verse 1 started by describing this river. It says it's full of crystals. That's the thing she had in her dream. She said, there was a piece of island that belonged to my neighbor's backyard, and I recognized a few empty big boxes that I thought belonged to them. At one point, I decided to start filming the river and my view for social media. I said something like, 1 year to go in this paradise. It was so beautiful. Then I saw on my phone screen my two sons at the other side of the river with all kinds of animals. They tried to protect something, smaller animals and a girl, from lions and cheetahs. I felt so proud because my son was brave and he stood up against them so bravely. And my second son was afraid and yelling for help, but he courageously protected his little girlfriend. And I felt so proud of them. And then she said, and I woke up remembering that I had found the fourth river. Now, she didn't say the fourth daughter, she said the fourth river. But that is, in fact, the fourth daughter. That's the second thing. So if you found the three, you'll find the fourth. If you could persist in the end and live in it and dwell in that state as if it were true, you would externalize the fourth. You would have that view that you can capture. But in this dream, this second dream that we've read just now, or that we've shared just now, we found that she's also preparing to leave this age or to depart from this age of just the law into the world of the promise. We find that she's preparing for that. She said 1 year to go in this beautiful paradise, meaning she's done all the cleaning, she's made a garden out of it, she's worked on a concept, she's worked on a consciousness, and now she's getting prepared to actually have that experience which Neville has so often described, which we have discussed last week when we talked about the state of soul. But while that is happening, and that is another key lesson for us, you don't have to wait for that to happen before you exercise your creative power of cleaning your state of consciousness of old. And don't just leave them vacant, because if you do, the old state of consciousness will crawl back in. The only way we can truly eliminate an undesirable or unwanted state of consciousness is by choosing the new one and fusing with it and identifying it to be so and protecting it at all costs from undesirable states or from harmful states. And these are the dreams. They teach us how to live in the end. They came to me during this week, and I thank the wonderful people who have shared them with me, because it shows that they are actually exercising their imagination constantly. They are conscious, wonderful creators. They study all the time and they practice what they've read. And the second dream I've just read right now contains a lesson from this. Nothing unclean shall enter it, nor anyone who practices abomination or falsehood, but only those who are written in the Lamb's book of life. So I want you to set out with yourself a task, a purpose, that you're going to construct your heaven. Don't wait for someone to give it to you. In the first dream, she didn't wait. She didn't go, okay, oh, now we have to wait for the lands to be cleared, or we have to wait until we find some new land. She said, no, we're just going to use the strategy. We will buy the old houses, we'll demolish them, reduce them to nothing, until not one stone is standing upon another, because they can't actually build on a piece of land where a stone is standing upon another. You can't build on a land, you can't build a new structure on an old structure where there's still even the foundation, right? So she said, we'll demolish it, completely bring it down to rubble, and then we will build the new structure of the church we want in it. And church is the house of the Lord. It means where your consciousness is dwelling. And so, and the second, the same experience is there. So set out for a purpose, that you're going to construct your own heaven on earth. You're not going to wait on anyone. You're not going to wait for the right time. You're not going to wait for until after you've studied this book, or until after you've read that lecture. But you're going to start to do it right here, right now. You're going to demolish all the old states by first identifying them, not denying them, but identifying them. And then second, holding yourself responsible. I brought all of this to pass, but that's it. That was in the past and no more. So we're not going to renew the rent. I paid the rent, but we're not going to renew it. And then third, constructing the new states that you want to become one with. And then begin to write out the new state of the clean things that you want, which means your ideals, the things that make for perfection in this world. Don't go on believing with people as they often say, oh, no one can be perfect. Let them say that. But scripture says, be ye perfect as your Father in heaven is perfect. That could only mean one thing. You can be perfect. You can live a perfect life. You can have a perfect world. So it's either it's the word of man against the word of God, right? And the Bible says, let all men be false, let all men be a liar, and let God be true. Romans 3, verse 4. Let all be liars, and let God be true. So if you can be perfect as your Father in heaven is perfect, if he says, be you holy as your Father is holy, but he says, I am holy. For you are holy, for I am holy. So if these are the words of God, and this word is in you, it's from the center that we can push the circumference. And the words are in you, within you. So begin to create the perfect life. Determine it right now that you're not going to live up your own life until you build the perfect world that you want. Until that perfect world is the only vision that occupies your consciousness. Until no gossip can randomly come into your mind. Nothing unclean can enter. Until no suspicions can randomly enter into your mind. Until no fears, no doubts can randomly come into your mind. Until the only thing that could occupy your state of your mind is the state of consciousness that you want. Make that commitment, and you will find the fourth daughter or the fourth river. The fourth river was never given a name. You know, means Euphrates. It's Euphrates. It means fruitfulness, but it's never given a location. Rather, in Genesis, go there. The other two were given location. The first one was said, this is the first one. It goes this way. It surrounds Avila. The second one, it surrounds Ethiopia. The third one goes to the east of Assyria. But the fourth one was never given a location because it is the only reality. And someone did this in this week because I want to show you that it is not only, this is not theory. This is experience. This is actual practice. So someone reached out to me and said, oh, I have actually been trying to work on something. I've imagined this and it seemed to be working out and then it suddenly collapsed. And I said to her, the collapse you complained about, I didn't see it in your definition of it. Define your aim to include the ideal that would replace your collapse. And after I said that to her, she said, okay, I'm going to do just that. Then later, earlier this week, last week, she said, hi, Adelere, I took a lot of what you said to heart. I did everything you asked, including revising. I spoke with the young lady I was training last week. She didn't quit. I thought she quitted because that was what she appeared to do. And I said to her, if you thought she quitted and you want someone that would work harmoniously with you, and I wouldn't quit, but I don't see in your definition of him that they would actually work with you and you'd enjoy a lifetime of relationship with them, or you'd enjoy a long-term association with them. How about you define that into your aim and then believe it into reality? So she said she did that. Then she said, oh, but the person came back and said I didn't quit. She said she forgot the days I wanted her to come in, and that after revising, she came back to work and she said, I love that job and I want to work for you. That was the story. So in her appearance, they quitted. But they only forgot. But they were appearing to have quitted to her because that was the state she was in. And she redefined her aim, became faithful to the new aim, and they came up again. She said she really loved the way they worked with her. And they came up again and they said, "Oh, I also love working with you. I only forgot the days you wanted me to come in." There you go. Be faithful to the new house, and you too will be able to share your own story. That's how it is done. That's how we live in the air. Construct the same, but don't stay on the second daughter. Don't stay on the second in the second river. Don't stay on just the promise of it, but actually live in it. Fulfill it to yourself by imagining it is real right now. And when you do, that pattern of heaven will become the visible experience on earth. That's our lesson today. So that is our concluding lesson also for this current series. Our next series will start after a 4 weeks break, which I think will be starting from either the last week of May or the first week of June. So the announcement will be made in the group, and you can watch out for that. And while that goes on, in this month of May, I'm inviting everyone who's a king and a queen here, okay, because apparently these are the people I teach. Okay, who's a king and a queen here to register for this acceptance class for May, right? And we have 6 classes together. They are Zoom classes, but at the same time, you can ask your questions. It's at the end of the classes, you can ask questions for clarity of whatever you'd like to understand. And then there is a worksheet again, like I've said. And if you ask me, "Hey, Adelere, what do you do? What's your routine?" Well, if you've been wondering what's my routine is that I follow my monthly classes. I do them. I exercise them. I use them to imagine my wish fulfilled. And all the success stories that I've ever shared, I can actually go to one monthly class when I first imagined it and point it out to you. This was what I imagined. This was when it happened. Okay? So I'm inviting you to do the same thing. Because the difference between those who have stories and those who don't is practice. And practice means a deliberate intention to educate yourself, to actually make commitment to that education. So come for acceptance, and you will learn how to accept the wish fulfilled, or how to actually feel the wish fulfilled up to the point of acceptance, where you realize without any effort, without zero effort, you can bring about the wish into your physical experience. So I believe that I will see you there. And yeah, today up until today there is a 20% discount on this class currently. So if you want to register up until now, you can with a 20% discount. I believe that tomorrow that discount closes. So you can until today, but tomorrow it will go back to 100 euros to register. So see you in May for the 6 classes, and see you from June for the resumption of our Sunday classes. So have a great time, everyone. Bye-bye.